Politicians have been dehumanised and we forget that that's somebody's husband or dad or wife or sister, you know, and we forget that.
Hello, I'm Victoria Newton, editor of The Sun, and today I'm joined by the sister of Jo Cox, Kim Leadbeater, who is the Labour candidate for Jo's old seat in Batley and Spen. Hi Kim, nice to see you.
You too, how are you doing?
Okay, it's a long time since we spoke last. So how is Batley on this fine sunny morning, afternoon?
Well, it actually is a fine sunny afternoon. It's lovely up here. Yeah, we've had some really good weather. We had a bit of a downpour this morning, but then it's come out really nice again.
Yeah, obviously you've been hammering the doors. How's it going there? What's your sense? What are people interested in?
It's going really well. It's very full on. But to be honest, I'm used to working at a pretty high intensity, so that's okay. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, most people have got very similar concerns, even though Batley and Spen's a very mixed constituency of people, you know, from lots of different backgrounds and stuff. The issues are very, very similar in terms of traffic and potholes and speeding and antisocial behaviour and fly tipping and all those things that really, you know, we call low-level crime, don't we, or low-level issues, but actually can have a massive impact on people's lives. So yeah, I'm having lots of those conversations. And it's just great getting out and speaking to so many people.
And does the mood feel quite positive to you?
I'm getting a lot of really positive feedback. I think the good thing is because I've lived here all my life, a lot of people know me, and a lot of people know me from the stuff that I did, you know, prior to 2016. So I used to teach community exercise classes. So I've had people knocking on doors today saying, oh, I used to come to Kim's aerobics class. And I was a lecturer at 2 other local colleges. So people know me for that. I've had my own business for a number of years. So people know me from that. And then obviously a lot of people know me from my work with the foundation for the last 5 years. So I'm getting some really positive feedback. And, you know, that for me is what this campaign's about. It's about listening to people and talking to people.
And how much of an advantage is it, do you think, to be a local girl who is not somebody from Westminster, certainly in the north?
I think it means a huge amount to local people to have somebody local standing. That's what everybody is saying. And I think it's really simple, isn't it? Their issues are my issues. You know, yeah. I've lived here all my life, so I know about the potholes and I know about the speeding cars and I know about all those frustrations that we've got and I know a lot of the work that needs to be done because I've lived and breathed it all my life. So I think that really does resonate with people. And
what are the sort of more national issues that come up as well? Do they concerned about the NHS, about schools? What other sort of things do you hear?
Yeah, I'm having some conversations. I've spoken to a fair number of nurses and teachers who have had obviously a really, really tough time during this last 15 months. And there is a lot of exhaustion. People have worked incredibly hard. I think there are concerns about, you know, NHS funding for education. Chatting to a few people over the last couple of days around dental care and access to dentists and access to doctor's appointments. So there are some issues which play out locally, but obviously have a national resonance as well.
Does Brexit come up now, or do people feel that's kind of done?
Interestingly, hardly anybody is mentioning Brexit. And I think that says a lot about where people are. I think people just want to move on and move forward. So yeah, very occasionally, but not much at all.
And is the general positivity there about the vaccination programme?
Yeah, there's a lot of positivity about the vaccine. I think coupled with frustration about how hard the last, 15 months or so has been. I think there's also still a lot of nervousness, if I'm honest. People are still anxious about getting back to normal, whatever that might look like. COVID is still on people's minds.
Then obviously one of the other issues in Batley that's had more national prominence has been the issue at the grammar school where the teacher was suspended for showing the cartoon. What's your take on that and what's the local feeling on that at the moment?
Well, it was really important that the investigation took place and the report was released, I think it was last week or maybe the week before, and I think the report has done a good job and come to some very sensible conclusions. I mean, ultimately, we need to be respectful of everybody's beliefs, and it's really important that different religious beliefs are respected within education and within society. And I've spent the last 5 years working on ways of bringing communities together, working on ways of living peacefully side by side. And the reality is that's what 95% of people want. Sadly, there probably are some people who would rather see division, but I think they're in a really small minority. So I think it's really important now that the kids get back to school, we get back to their education. They've missed out on so much during this last really difficult year. That has to be the priority. And then coming together as a community. And do you know what? Batley and Spen are really good at that. I've seen that very personally, up close. So I think it's important the investigation took place. We've got to focus now on kids getting back to school and pulling together.
Yeah, you mentioned obviously the last 5 years, the work that you've been doing has been incredible. I don't know quite how you've managed it on a personal level, that resilience and bravery that you've shown. How do you do it?
That's a really good question, and I wish I knew. I remember thinking sort of early on in 2016, 2017, gosh, I knew I was strong. I've always been a strong person, but I actually don't know how I've done it. And I think some of it, to be honest, Victoria, is, I've said this a few times, is, what happened still doesn't feel real. And there's a bit of me that sort of hopes it never will, because, who knows how you're going to cope with that when it does start to feel real. But people are resilient. I mean, gosh, so many people have been through such horrific things, whether it's natural disasters or terrorist attacks, and we do find a way of pulling through. And I think also, I remain, as many people do, hugely inspired by what I think Jo would want me to do. And she would want me to crack on with life and embrace it with all my heart. And that's what I'm trying to do.
And your parents too. I remember talking to you a while ago where you almost have to become a parent to your parents in a crisis like you've gone through. And how are they coping now? And you've obviously managed to help them through this.
Yeah, Mum and Dad are just amazing. They're just the kindest, nicest people you could hope to meet. They'll never be the same again. Our family will never be the same again. But we found a way to support each other and pull each other through, surrounded by a fantastic network of friends and a community that really embraced us from the start and made us feel that we were on our own. I couldn't love anybody any more than I do my mum and dad, and they're such an important part of my life.
And they've been hugely supportive of this decision of yours, because it's a hell of a brave decision to do what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, a massive decision, by far the biggest decision I've ever had to make. We talked it through as a family, as you would expect, before I decided to put myself forward. Initially, we were all, yes, you should do it, you'd be amazing, you'd be great. And then we all went, whoa, 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 what a ridiculous suggestion, why would you even think about it? And then we sort of pulled right back again and went, you know what, if you don't give this a go, you may well look back and regret it. And that would be really, really upsetting. And also, for me, if someone who doesn't love this community in the way that I do gets this job, I would be really worried that would do damage. And having worked my socks off for 5 years, along with many other people, to build a strong community and to tackle some of the issues that people care about, it will break my heart to think that somebody came in who couldn't or didn't want to build on that work.
Absolutely. It feels like the community in the last 5 years has been so with you. They deserve somebody local to help them get through the future.
Oh, people are amazing, aren't they? Do you know, the vast majority of people are just wonderful. And, the number of people that work across Batley and Spen, whether it's charities or community groups, volunteering, organisations, businesses, they all just want to get on with their lives, get the kids through a good education, look after their mums and dads and elderly relatives and live together peacefully. And that's what we see. But, and particularly, during lockdown, we've seen how resilient people are and also how amazing they are at pulling together when times are tough. And I think, again, the way for me to try and support some of that work and try and build on some of that work, if I could do that as our MP, that would be a huge honour and it's a hugely important job.
And just quickly on lockdown, you mentioned it there, it's the most common conversation now, isn't it? How did you cope with lockdown? What have you been doing? Watching lots of telly?
I wish. No, so we had a role through the Jo Cox Foundation as one of the community anchors. So basically the council needed to be connected with the community and some of the groups that popped up, the COVID response groups that popped up, and we were the link basically. So we were involved in getting out food parcels to people, getting prescriptions out to people, and then we developed some of our own projects. So we did a project around digital inclusion where we were getting tablets and laptops out to people who were living on their own. We did an online project called Community Makes Us where we got people to come online and share their experiences of what lockdown was like. Really powerful. So older people speaking to younger people, you know, and it's that thing, isn't it? We were all in the same sea but sailing different ships, and I think one of the ways to deal with that was by sharing those experiences. So that was a really powerful piece of work. So yeah, we were busier than ever. We had to reframe a lot of the work that we did around the Great Get Together, so we started doing a lot more online activities, as everybody did so brilliantly, but also then looking at what we could do in real life and really encouraging and embracing the neighbourliness that we saw. You know, and we saw such amazing things going on at a hyper-local level. People knocking on each other's doors and looking out for each other, taking the baking round and, you know, pulling the wheelie bins in and all that sort of stuff. So I was heavily involved in all that, and it was totally inspiring to see how people responded.
So no line of duty for you?
No, I did manage Line of Duty and the Queen's Gambit, which I thought both were brilliant. So I managed a little bit of telly in between.
So despite the horrendous situation you went through when Jo died, you seem to me a lot more positive about where the country is, just the way you're talking about the neighbourliness and how people have, you know, been all in this together. Is that an accurate reflection of what you think? I
am a glass half full person by nature. We've always been a glass half full family, you know, always looking for the positives, always finding something, you know, some light in the darkest of times. I think it's wrong to say that I am unrealistically optimistic. You know, I'm pretty realistic that there are problems and that there are issues, but I think it's always really important to try and find a way to deal with those issues in as positive a way as you can. So yeah, and also, you know, I get my energy from people. And when you spend as much time with people as I have done throughout my whole career, throughout my whole life, and, you know, in the community, then that keeps you going. You know, so if ever you're having a bad day, there's always someone who's going to, you know, prop you up and get you going again. Women
in politics do get a hard time, don't they? Whether it's Laura Kuenssberg on social media and needing bodyguards at party conferences, that would terrify me. But you seem that you're up for it.
Well, there's two things there. One, you're absolutely right. The toxicity in politics and in public life is pretty horrific at times. And I've had lots of conversations with politicians, journalists and others over the last few years about some of the abuse that they've faced. And, you know, it's awful, quite frankly. But what I would say to that as well is, you know, Jo used to say to me, if good people don't step up, then nothing will change. And, you know, even though it's a really difficult decision for me and for lots of other women, if you want to make a difference, then you've kind of got to put yourself out there. But it is tough. It's really tough. I mean, we've done a lot of work through the foundation around civility in public life and how we can improve political discourse, because it does filter down. It filters down to communities, you know. But it's also really simple, isn't it? It's about how you treat other human beings, and that's what everything for me comes down to. You know, don't treat other people how you wouldn't want to wish to be treated yourself. It's actually really quite simple stuff.
And do you feel, I mean, some of it was coming from the hard left, the sort of Corbynista side of the party. Do you think the party's moved on a bit now, do you feel?
I think the Labour Party is moving in the right direction, absolutely. I think it's important that the Labour Party is a broad church, where everybody feels welcome as long as they believe in the fundamental principles around equality and social justice and fairness. So yeah, I think it's an important time for the Labour Party. But again, it's just revisiting those really simple principles, isn't it, about, you know, how we treat each other.
And do you think Corbyn should get the whip restored?
Listen, I'm not close enough to it to have a yes or no answer to that. I'm sure the party will decide what the right thing is in the interest of the party.
And how do you feel Keir's been doing during the pandemic for Labour?
I think Keir took over the leadership at a really difficult time. You know, during a pandemic, you're not able to go out and meet people. You're not able to do the full workings of Westminster and do proper PMQs and everything that goes with that. So I think he's had a really difficult time in that regard. I think he has provided stability. I think he's done very well at holding the government to account when it's been needed. But I think, you know, to be fair to him, he had a very difficult period of time where he probably couldn't do right for doing wrong, because had he been too antagonistic to the government, people would have criticised him and said, hang on, you need to pull behind the country. But equally, you know, he has tried to hold to account when has been necessary. I just think hopefully as we open up, he will get an opportunity to go out and meet people in the real world, because that is it's very different, isn't it, to doing everything virtually.
Well, yeah, you're doing a lot of that now, aren't you? Which you've got more experience of that perhaps than he's had.
Yeah, and there's no substitute, is there, for having a proper conversation in real life with a real human being. You know, you can do as many Zooms as you want, but it's not the same. The body language, the interaction, you know, all that sort of stuff, and you know, the conversations that take place organically and naturally, we don't get that in the same way online. So I think it's really important. You know, and also it goes to the fact that, again, going back to the civility in public life piece, you know, politicians have been dehumanised, and we forget that that's somebody's husband or dad or wife or sister, you know, and we forget that. And I think the virtual world doesn't help with that, does it? If you're out speaking to people in person, you know, you are a real human being, aren't you? If you're on a little box on the screen, then it's difficult to get that over.
And do you think the party's still got a bit more evolving to do? I'm thinking of things like anti-Semitism has obviously been a big issue, and maybe locally, I don't know, is the feeling that has Keir said enough on Palestine? Does that something that comes up? Do you think the party's still evolving?
I think it's a pivotal time for the Labour Party, and I think, yeah, there's work to be done, and I think everybody's been very open and honest about that. I think it's really important that as a potential MP or as an MP, you listen to what the needs of your community are, and certainly I will be feeding things back to the Labour Party that people telling me on the doorsteps are concerned about, and that's really, really important. And I think, you know, we've got 2 or 3 years before we've got a general election, so this is a really important time for the Labour Party to do that listening piece and to, you know, develop its priorities based on what the needs of communities and the needs of the country are. So I think everyone's been very honest and open about that.
And can anyone beat Boris? He seems invincible at the moment. I mean, Hartlepool, and what's your view on that? How do Labour beat Boris?
I mean, the evidence suggests that, you know, incumbent governments have done well during lockdown, and I guess that you would expect that, wouldn't you? But I think, listen, that, you know, we need a strong opposition, and we need to get the Labour Party, you know, in a place where it's able to provide a really strong voice to challenge the government where necessary. So I think it's really important, like I say, during these coming months and the next couple of years, that the Labour Party puts itself in a position where it is able to challenge the Conservative government and indeed Boris on the things that they get wrong. So I think that piece of rebuilding is very important.
And would you ever fancy being leader?
I think we're a long way from there yet. I've not even been elected yet. I mean, you know, it's very early days for me. And what I would say is, if I'm fortunate enough to get elected, my priority is the community and it's the constituency. That's what I would be focusing very heavily on. Clearly, I'd have to get used to splitting my week between Westminster and Batley and Spen. But, you know, I would look to initially build on the work that I've done with local community groups, with charities, with businesses. That is absolutely where my priority would be.
And that's what the local people want, yeah?
It is. That's exactly what local people want. When you're knocking on doors, like I say, the vast majority of issues that people are concerned about are hyper-local. And across Batley and Spen, that's even within each individual town and village. You know, because that's the other thing, people sort of have this homogenous view of Batley and Spen. But because I've lived here all my life, it's not like that. Every little town and village has got different concerns. And that's why you need somebody local who can listen to those concerns and respond accordingly. So whether it's, you know, it might be a planning application in one part of the constituency, then it might be antisocial behaviour in another part of the constituency. So those are the things that I would prioritise in the short term, definitely.
And do you think that the North does have a real problem with, well, Labour has a problem in the North a bit now, so obviously we've seen Hartlepool and you had the Red Wall. Is that a real big problem, do you think, still?
I think Labour needs to reconnect with its original base. And the people who voted Labour all their lives, but over the last maybe 5 years or so, have kind of felt like it's not quite where they belong. So we need to really reconnect with those people. And I think, you know, naturally that will happen over time, but we've got to do a piece of work listening to those people. You know, and clearly Brexit did play a part in that. I think the consensus now is that we need to move forward from Brexit, but that was obviously hugely influential. But we need to make sure that everybody feels welcome within the Labour Party. You know, Batley and Spen is a traditional working class selection of towns and villages. You know, the Labour Party should be those people's natural home. So we need to make sure if they don't feel like that, why not, and what can we do to show them that actually this is exactly where they belong.
And how do you feel about the Galloway Circus coming to town? Not going to dwell on him, but is it circus? Is that a right way to describe it? And does it concern you in any way?
I think that's a pretty accurate word, and I would move beyond individuals, and I would say, you know, there are going to be several people who are going to come and stand for election in the by-election, and sadly some of them will want to sow division. They will want to try and divide our communities, and my job is to try and rise above that and focus on the issues that local people care about, because ultimately when that circus disappears, we all have to live here, and I have to live here. You know, and the media will go, the cameras will go, the people who don't live in Batley and Spen will go, but me and my family and my friends and the amazing people of this area will still be here.